Welcome to the RV Canucks podcast, Canada's RV podcast for weekend warriors, part-time travelers, and full-time adventurers at heart. Today is July 3rd, 2025, and this is episode 62. I'm Melina.
And I'm Dan.
And we're about to roll on our biggest road trip of the season, a grand tour of the Maritimes. Although, sorry, we're not going to Newfoundland, so we'll catch Newfoundland next time. But before we hit the road, we've got one last episode packed with tips, news, and some important things coming up for the show. But of course, we need to start with a word from our lovely sponsors for 2025, Niagara Trailers. So we're talking about pre-trip checklists in this episode. But I want everybody to know it's perfectly okay if the only item on that checklist is to take your trailer to somebody that you trust. For us, those people are Niagara Trailers. Their service team can help you catch a brake issue before you hit the highway. They do inspections, maintenance, upgrades, repairs, all with the kind of customer care we wish more places had. They are also an RV Care dealer member, so if you're from out of town or out of the province, they will treat you as one of their own and get you on your way pretty darn quick. And if you're in the market for a new rig, they'll walk you through the process from start to finish, no pressure and no fluff. So check them out at niagaratrailers.com or visit their lot in St. David's, Ontario, and tell them the RV Canucks sent you. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Melina.
So maybe we should start out with a little bit of important news for RV owners in Ontario, and it might even matter or be interesting to people who don't live in the province because I think it, has the potential to signal maybe more changes to come for other provinces.
Yeah, so the government's made a couple of regulatory changes in Ontario. The province has now made a couple of adjustments to the classes of license and how they relate to different weights. So it used to be that if your RV rig was 11,000 kilograms combined weight, you needed a Class A or Class D license, which are different types of license to essentially drive different types of trucks, like truck driver trucks. So they've made an improvement for RV owners, and so that rate that has been increased to 14,000 kilograms, which means if you're under 14,000 kilograms, you can do that on a G license. And for the people that aren't in Ontario, a G license is your standard license that you would get after you turn 16 that lets you drive a minivan, an SUV, a four-door car. Mm-hmm. So that streamlines things. If you do need to get an A license or a D license, they've adjusted the requirements on those, and you can get a endorsement for restricted D, which essentially they've simplified some of the testing, and by taking a $23.75 course, you don't need to do the full test, you just need to do a portion that applies to the operation of an RV. So I think that makes it a little bit simpler, probably makes it a little bit safer in the sense that there's a little bit of training. Now, let's put this in context. It's a $24 course and it's 45 minutes. So I'm not expecting, in-depth
deep theory
content, but I think what we need to realize is that a little bit of education, whether you need that course or not, might be a good idea because many people might not have experience towing or driving something larger, and to be able to do something at 14,000 kilograms, which I think is roughly 30,000 pounds, that's a lot of weight. And if you're just under that and don't need the course, it still might be a good idea to have the course because you could just do the basic parallel parking driving test and then be driving something pretty big down the street.
Right, for sure. And what's interesting about this change is that Ontario now joins, I believe PEI is the only other province that has this extension to the limit up to 14,000 kilograms. Everybody else is pretty restrictive. I know BC, for instance, is anything over 4,600 kilograms. So that's 10,000, 11,000 pounds. You need to have the endorsement on your license. So who knows what'll happen, if it'll make other provinces kind of, extend or, increase the weight limit before you require that endorsement. But it's interesting to watch and see.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good change overall.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're literally a day away from the start of our trip with a pit stop in Ottawa. And if you are just catching this, go back and listen to the last couple episodes where we talk about this being kind of our planning trip. I have never figured out an elegant way to say that, but we're winging a lot of it, except for a couple of key parts. Understanding that in Canada, especially summer of 2025, the East Coast is turning out to be quite the hotspot for people from all over the country to visit. So we know that it's going to be incredibly busy. And we're going to, an island that has limited ingress and egress on and off the island. So you go by bridge or you go by ferry. And so we are taking the Confederation Bridge over to PEI, and we are taking the ferry out of PEI to Nova Scotia. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the booking process for a truck and a trailer to go on the Northumberland ferry.
Yeah, so I think this is an exciting part of the trip because maybe it's not all about the destination. So the bridge itself is an architectural marvel of sorts, and so we're interested to go over that, but we want to take what they've been doing for many decades and also take the ferry. So booking the ferry I'd say it was a relatively pleasant experience. Customer service was certainly top notch, and they were easy to talk to. So we booked the ferry from PEI to Nova Scotia through Northumberland Ferry. They operate 3 different ferries in the area. We're taking the one from PEI to Nova Scotia. So went to their website, read up on the information. It says any vehicle over 7 feet tall needs to phone the 1-800 number. And of course, that includes the height of your trailer, and our trailer in particular is just over 12 feet tall. So I phoned the 1-800 number. I spoke to a lady called Joey. She was incredibly helpful, pretty laid back as you would expect from somebody out on the East Coast. Went ahead and booked the ferry. I think it's about a 70-minute trip. You need to be there 40 minutes early, and I think it costs us about $160. If you're listening to this podcast, my advice is to go check out their website because they have seasonal deals and specials, and so the price probably fluctuates a little bit. Pretty easy to get booked on. The one point that I would note is that many of us all know how tall our rigs are because we don't want to take the air conditioner off underneath an overpass. We all don't have a good sense of how long our rigs are. And when I say that, I mean we have a sense that we were just about 50 feet. She needed to know right down to the foot. So we had to go out, measure everything, add it up. Turns out we're 56 feet. 9 days out of 10, this is not a problem because you're just pulling into a parking lot. You know whether you fit or not. On the ferry, they're counting feet and inches, so it matters to them.
They're stacking Jenga blocks to get the most efficiency.
Well, they are really, because I said the first time I called and I spoke to her, I said, I think we're about 50 feet. Do you have room? And she goes, we have 5 20-foot blocks left. And I'm like, do you need me to race out and get this done in the next 20 minutes? And she's like, no, you got a couple of days. Nevertheless, we kind of got it done that night, brought us a bit of peace of mind. But I would recommend giving them a phone call because it was a really pleasant experience. Customer service is top notch. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the first ferry story.
And I will say, because we did mention the Confederation Bridge, so we are going over to PEI on the Confederation Bridge. Is this bridge a toll bridge? 100% yes. However, they charge the round trip price on your way out of PEI. So if you go into PEI on the bridge and you go out on the ferry, you don't actually pay the bridge toll. But if you go in on the ferry and out on the bridge, you pay the bridge toll, and it's a round trip toll. And if you go in on the bridge and out on the bridge, you pay the bridge toll on your way out. So we are going in on the bridge, free trip, out on the ferry, paid trip.
Short story of all that is getting onto the island is free by bridge.
Yes.
Whether you take the bridge or you take a ferry, you got to pay to get off the island. So they kind of
set California situation.
Well, they set that up smart.
Yeah.
So a couple of days later, we're kind of nosing around, looking at what sites we want to hit. We took a look at, and I think we were kind of leaning towards taking the Northumberland ferry, this one from Yarmouth to Bar Harbor, Maine, because it would have taken about 6 hours of drive time off the trip. Mm-hmm. So, of course, we're over 7 feet tall. They say call the 1-800 number. I call the 1-800 number. I follow the prompts. I get to the Yarmouth to Bar Harbor, Maine attendant who's equally friendly. And I speak with her. She speaks with her manager. Her manager refers me to the harbor master.
Because of the length.
Because of the length of the trailer. At one point along the way, they ask if the trailer can be separated and driven separately from the truck, which I thought was a bit of an odd question given the length. Like, I'm not sure if they were expecting us to like push the trailer around, but of course it can't, so we can't separate it. They eventually determined that they had room for us on the ferry. So far in the story, good news. This is probably like 20 minutes into the conversation on a Sunday afternoon. We get to the point where they need to get our passport information. That goes really smooth. If you're ever going to book it, make sure that you kind of have your passports handy because you are crossing an international border. We get to the very end and she says, okay, how do you want to pay for this? And I'm like, MasterCard. And she goes, it's $9.13. Now, understand that the first ferry we booked was about $160 for 70 minutes. This one's just a little bit double the duration, but quite a bit more than double the price. And so
it's like 10 times the price.
Melina's sitting on the couch, her eyes bug out, my eyes bug out, and I kind of clarified with the lady. I'm like, you mean like $913, like a little bit less than $1,000? And she said yes. And we kind of gave
in U.S. dollars.
In U.S. dollars,
yeah.
Right? So it was definitely going to be over $1,000. So long story short is we decided not to take the ferry. After an hour on the phone call, the lady completely understood. Like, I think the price is a little bit over the top, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And listen, for a variety of reasons, we're going there and coming back through Canada, but was it enticing enough to like nip 6 hours of a corner? Like, you're knocking like the whole province of New Brunswick off the trip on the way back. Like, is it enticing? Yeah, absolutely. But not at that price. And the more I think about this, the more I think, like, is this like, if you're a roofer and you really don't want a job, you price yourself out of the market? Like, maybe we were just too long.
I kind of wonder because at one point during the phone call, she said, there's a surcharge of $15 for every foot over 50 feet. So the last 6 feet was an extra $15 a foot. So maybe this is how they keep the big ones off the ferry. We'll probably come back to it at some point years down the road and take the ferry, but it was not going to be, it probably would have been like by the conversion rate, a $1,300 trip for us. And I don't think we were there. So yeah. We're driving an extra 5 hours and going to spend some quality time together in the front seat of the good ship Gillies and not the high-speed cat ferry.
Okay. So do we want to tell the good people what we actually spent that $1,300 on then?
Yeah, because I think we're maybe pivoting over to the checklist conversation here.
Yeah.
So I think probably everybody has a bit of a checklist for getting out the door on a weekend, or you have a bit of a checklist to kick yourself off for the season. I think we're not really kind of talking about that part of the checklist. There are a few things that you want to do if you're going on a big trip, and I think that's what we're coming to. So we have done a little bit of truck maintenance over the last, what would we say, 8 weeks or so?
A little bit.
A
lot of it.
We did a lot of it. So about 8 weeks ago, we needed to put new tires on the truck. We planned for that. We knew that was coming. Mm-hmm. They just reached the end of their life expectancy. F-150, for those of you who don't know, it's got about 250,000 kilometers on it. If it doesn't, it will by the end of next week. Mm-hmm. So it's got some mileage on it. We had a couple warning lights for like
sensors,
backup sensors, lane departure, check park gate, all the beeping stuff that goes off when you're getting into a parking spot. Those needed to be repaired. And the check engine light had been coming off and on intermittently. So all those sensors got repaired. We got the catalytic converters done, which, is not directly tied to RVing, but it's tied to 250,000 kilometers. So
of coast to coast to coast travel over the last 10 years.
Right. So catalytic converters are done. Sensors are done. I think the bill came in. So tires, I feel like, was just under $2,000. Catalytic converters and sensors came in just under
like $6,000.
$6,000. Drive it for a week. Check park aid light comes on again. So I phone up the dealership again, and I'm like, we were just in here like a week and a half ago, and he's like, well, the other side needs done. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, dude, I just dropped $6,000 in this. He took 10% off. It does sting a little bit, like.
But listen, okay. So when we purchased this truck for literally the long haul, like literally and figuratively. So we bought the truck almost 10 years ago. We don't have any payments on it. We purposely went with the F-150 Lariat, with the tow package, with the extendable mirrors and the upgraded transmission and all of the things that we knew would serve us well because of how much we wanted to travel with this truck. And listen, like, I will take these odd repairs, every couple of years over a car payment any day. I think it has served us very well. Knock on wood, we'll continue to do so until we are ready to upgrade the trailer and downsize the house. And it's been a great truck, so I am not complaining.
And you're not wrong, but I'm almost 50 and I take the right to complain a little bit.
Fair.
So also what we did, we got an oil change done. So I think, it's not super critical that you get an oil change done because you're going. We got the oil change done because we knew we would need one while we were on the road. It's a whole lot more convenient to do it when you're at home and you can get the oil change done at a convenient time rather than, traveling along the road. Maybe you got to adjust your schedule slightly. Even if you still need to find a quick lube place and it takes 20 minutes, it still means like you need to detach your trailer, keep people entertained, go in, re-hook up. So it's just easier to plan ahead and just get the oil change done so that it's one less thing that doesn't encumber the rest of the trip. I also did a detailed cleaning, which is kind of a me thing because after, a whole winter of driving people to hockey tournaments and picking up stuff for projects around the house, the truck was kind of gross. So I have vacuumed it out, cleaned the mats, like wiped everything down. It doesn't quite look like it came off the showroom floor, but it looks a lot better than it did. And then I put some Rain-X on the windows and cleaned everything up, and that's kind of just a weird obsessive compulsive thing I have about using Rain-X on the windows because I find it makes the drive a little bit easier. So that's kind of what we've done for the truck.
So the trailer, I would say the checklist or the pre-trip checklist is a little bit different than our normal pre-trip checklist that we would do every trip. And if you would like to listen about that checklist in detail, go all the way back to episode 7. Although that was filmed, that was recorded back in 2020. So it's probably time for a bit of a refresh. But if you're looking for a very in-depth, really good pre-trip checklist, like the top things we pack, all of that kind of stuff, go back to episode 7. I think for the purposes of this episode, we're talking about like, what are the things that we do differently before a really big trip in our pre-trip checklist, which is also like not only the things that we're doing that we might not check every single time, like I'm not obsessive about checking the propane levels, but we're probably going to check the life of the battery and see how we're doing and, things like that. But it's also about what we're not taking. Yeah.
So maybe we'll just start at the front of the trailer. We've made sure the battery's all charged up, ready to go, because there's a couple of nights where we're not with power at Harvest Host. So we know that's good to go. We make sure that the propane is good to go, and we've got lots for that because we do tend to burn a little bit more propane on these road trips with the fridge and stuff. So that's good. I still go out, and I'd almost say this is almost like a mid-season checkup, really. I go out and I check the trailers, and I get down on my hands and knees, and I kind of run my hand along the back and have a good look at the front and, make sure we got valve covers screwed on and nuts are torqued on.
And leaf springs.
Right. Yeah. Make sure everything looks right and have a good look at it. Make sure the spare tires got air, right? So those are the kind of things that we do to get going. Seals, we've had to just pop in a new center cap just to keep the dust out of the wheel. Like it's going to help over the long term. It wouldn't fret if I lost one at the side of the road, but just the little things that kind of you add to your list, we kind of make sure those are all done. Bit of a mid-season checkup.
Yeah. And did you mention fuses? We don't check fuses a lot, but I think like this is like we go on one big trip a year. That's probably a good idea to make sure we have all the variety of fuses we need.
Yeah, and so I've got fuses squirreled away like a chipmunk.
And we have had to give people fuses in parking lots before.
Yeah, so I've got some fuses in the trailer, I got fuses in the truck, I got fuses in the glove box. Like there's a couple of different, which this came to light while I'm cleaning the truck. And
Dan's like a squirrel.
Making sure that we've got like all the right, lug nuts and jacks and everything to change a spare tire. So all of those things are kind of getting done. So yes, we do have fuses and, I made sure that the drill's in there for stabilizers and stuff like that tonight.
And then let's talk about how we take the glamp out of our camp, I guess. Like, we're leaving some stuff behind.
Yeah, so I call it, like, decluttering. I think if you have, we all agree that if your house is decluttered, your office is decluttered, the car's decluttered, you have a much better experience. You're a little bit more relaxed. So we make some thoughtful decisions about what we actually need. So we have stripped out the barbecue. It's just a small tabletop barbecue. Occasionally we'll bring a larger Blackstone with us if we're doing some weekend camping. We're not doing that. So we've stripped this down. We're just we've borrowed a small tabletop griddle, and we'll do most of our cooking on that for the two of us.
Or the fire.
Or the fire, or, you know, like we still do a lot of
Or a restaurant, or a brewery, or a winery.
Well, yeah. Like
or a pizzeria.
There's probably a local beer and a lobster roll in our future. So I mean, like, I think we've simplified things down that way. We have kind of stripped out the extra lawn chairs that we don't need, because you're always, at least it feels to me, there's a lawn chair on a bed or in a truck and it's in the way.
Did you keep the beach chairs though?
The beach chairs are in there.
Okay, good.
And the dad chair's in there. So we've taken out a couple extra lawn chairs. We have one of those 6-foot tables that folds in half. I took that out of there because, like, if we cannot manage our toast and our coffee by ourselves on this trip, we've got some larger issues to talk about.
Well, usually when we're camping with family, we have a bit of an assembly line for breakfast in the morning, so hence the 6-foot table, very useful.
Yeah, and if you're just stopping once or twice, or you're in the same spot for a while, to have that, it's nice and handy. But when you're moving every day or every couple of days and you have to keep moving the lawn chairs from beside the bed or the table, it gets a little bit tedious. So we don't need it. We're not going to use it. We've stripped it out. Lowers our weight. More than anything, I think it just declutters the whole trailer.
And makes room for the bikes inside the trailer.
Yeah, so if you've been following along in the podcast, you know that we're driving from southern Ontario to Ottawa, stopping, putting the trailer in storage for a little bit. So I've put the bikes into the trailer, mostly for security, because it's going to go into storage and we don't want the bikes stolen. Mm-hmm. So normally what we would do is just leave them on the front of the trailer and we'd lock them up, and you're around there all the time anyways. We're not worried, but we're leaving it for a couple of days, so it's just as easy to stash them in the trailer, drive down the road. Once we hit the road again next week to move on to PEI, we'll pull them out of the trailer, put them on the front, pull them out of the inside of the trailer, put them on the rack on the front of the trailer, and move along. So that's kind of what we've been doing the last, week and a half, 2 weeks or so, just kind of chipping away at it a little bit at a time.
And so I guess I would wrap up by saying the last thing that we're sort of leaving behind is like preconceived notions about, you know, what a perfect trip looks like. I'm leaving my type A personality at home. Usually I plan these trips very, very carefully. I am a really big believer in itineraries, but we know often that things go wrong, things don't go as planned. You can run into problems on the road, you run into delays, whether they weather, construction, otherwise. So I guess if you're taking one tip or writing one tip down on that pre-trip checklist, for me it would be like, take it as it comes. You're going on a massive long trip. It's not always going to go to plan. So like, work in some buffer time and work in some time where you kind of don't have to be anywhere, so that, you know, if you miss something, you can make up time elsewhere in the trip.
Yeah, I think as we've kind of done our research here, there's a lot less, we're doing a lot less hitting stuff. Like, we need to be hit this thing in the morning and this place in the afternoon. We're kind of hitting more of the broad strokes, right? We're hitting the
highlights.
Yeah, we're hitting the highlights. The Cavendish Coast, Charlottetown, the ferry ride is a thing in and of itself. We're going to hit Lunenburg. So, like, we kind of got a few big things we want to hit, but I think the trip, as much as anything, is the point and the time in between all of those places. And so there's lots of time to just putter along and enjoy ourselves, really. Mm-hmm. Because I think this place, more than any, might be one of those places where it's the stuff you're not expecting that become the memorable parts of the trip.
For sure.
And then I guess the last thing maybe is like preparing the kids to stay at home.
Sure.
So we've got a 20-year-old and a almost 17-year-old. So we have got them their favorite snacks to take to work from a trip to Costco. We'll leave them some money for groceries. I think as much as we would love them to come on this trip, this is a journey for them, and it's something they have to do by themselves to just bolster their own independence. Listen,
you're talking like we've never left them home alone before, which is completely not the case. Dan and I are frequent travelers on our own. But it is a consideration as a parent, you know, we want to make sure they're set up for success if things go wrong, right? We have an adult and a young adult. They're going to be working almost all of the time, but, you know, we have my parents that live right around the corner. I've spoken to our next door neighbors, like just to everybody like community makes it better. You look out for each other and it gives us more peace of mind. Like, I mean, our kids are very well prepared of what to do in an accident and they're great in a crisis. But just knowing that there's, support systems set up here and, they can go to the grocery store and pick what they like and cook as opposed to us leaving a list for them. Cause I think they're going to do more cooking that way as opposed to Uber Eats showing up at the doorstep every day. It just gives us more peace of mind that, everything's okay and we don't have to worry if something goes wrong because we're so far away. We know that things will be handled.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to drill down at was almost to the point you're trying to make. We've left parts of this where they're going to have to figure it out themselves, like how are they going to get to work, right? Is it going to be 2 feet in a heartbeat? Is it going to be your bicycle or is it going to be grandpa? But you got to figure it out and you need to take care of that. You need to figure out what you're going to eat when you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
Right, so we've kind of set them up to figure this stuff out themselves and they'll probably bumble along, but it'll get done and that's part of the journey of life.
They'll have a great time, as will we. So exciting news for the show. I think we're going to have some, mid-trip episodes. Obviously, we're away for a couple of weeks and we try to put these episodes out every 2 weeks. So there'll be at least one from PEI or Nova Scotia, wherever we happen to be at that time. So we will be recording on the road. I would encourage everybody to follow along on TikTok and Instagram at RV Canucks because I'm sure we will be doing some content there and maybe we'll, videotape and throw up or even, give you a live preview of what loading the trailer on and off of the ferry looks like in real time. And when we get back in August, we have a couple of really exciting, guest podcasts that we're teeing up. So do you want to talk about the first one? Yeah,
so the first one are our good friends, Ben and Janine, and they've been on the podcast before. We've known them for about a dozen years, and the last time they were on was 3 or 4 years ago, and they were talking about their trip in their Class C motorhome with their family out to Drumheller in Alberta and stuff like that. So they've since purchased a new trailer this year, a bunkhouse trailer, if I remember correctly. So we're going to talk to them about that experience and what led them to make the switch.
And they are far better versed to talk about the process of getting a new trailer because it's been quite some time since we bought ours. So that'll be a great episode. The next episode that we are trying to schedule is a gentleman named Brian DeLoader, and he is from 10 Telescopes. So this is an organization in Guelph that creates and loans out 3D printed telescopes. And I met Brian when I went to a Science on Tap event with my dad on astrophotography, and he was talking about how to take really, really great pictures of the night sky with whatever cameras, telescopes, etc. And he kind of went through the stages of, if you have a basic camera, here's how you can get a really good shot of the night sky. And I thought he would be perfect to chat with, especially since, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, where we're heading out to is an international dark sky preserve. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for us to catch some night skies that we can take some great images of. And Brian has also renovated and taken a customized camper van down to Colorado to do the same thing. For capturing images of the night sky. He's a super fascinating individual. So we're really excited to talk to him sometime in August.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting because there's so many places in North America you can do that, right?
Yeah, we've been to probably one of the best in Anza Borrego Desert State Park in California. We do have an episode on that as well.
Yep, and there's one in Nova Scotia, and I know there's a couple in Central Ontario and the Muskokas, so I think it's really something that people might get some interest out of.
Yeah. So with that, we are almost ready to hit the hay and then hit the road very early tomorrow on this trip. So I guess we'll end it there, and safe travels to you all, and we will see you on the road.
Definitely. Have a great week, folks.
Bye.
Bye.